threat against the Supreme Court. Police arrest an armed man near the home of Justice Brett Kavanaugh. Fight for the unborn. Another pro-life pregnancy center is vandalized, continuing a disturbing recent trend. Summit of the Americas. President Joe Biden arrives in Los Angeles. We're on the ground with the latest. And Fountain of Youth. The world's oldest man credits a prayer ritual for his longevity. On EWTN News Nightly for Wednesday, June 8th, 2022. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. I'm Tracy Sable. After days of buildup, President Joe Biden joins delegates from other countries in Los Angeles. He is delivering remarks at the inaugural ceremony of the Summit of the Americas. The question now is, what, if anything, will be accomplished over the next few days? White House correspondent Owen Jensen continues our coverage from California. Owen.
Tracy, great to see you. We're outside the Microsoft Theater in downtown Los Angeles, day 3 of our coverage of the Summit of the Americas. Now, President Joe Biden will be speaking from this venue tonight, but how much is actually accomplished remains to be seen.
President Joe Biden leaves Washington on his way to the Summit of the Americas, but first tells reporters,
I think the voters sent a clear message last night. Both parties have to step up and do something about crime as well as gun violence.
The president will spend the next 3 days in Los Angeles, where just last night I asked U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken.
Secretary Blinken, what's your message to all the countries attending this summit? What's your message, sir?
Very soon.
Secretary Blinken later said the press is essential.
One of the main areas of focus of the summit was finding ways collectively to provide support to independent media.
Before President Biden speaks tonight, the White House sent out a statement, what it calls a historic new agreement, the America's Partnership for Economic Prosperity.
The statement reads in part, we will strengthen our supply chains to be more resilient against unexpected shocks. And under the cloud of COVID, it adds, Latin America and the Caribbean has seen the deepest economic contraction of any region in the world. And as other nations arrive, this plane from Peru, Vice President Kamala Harris welcoming international leaders to her home state. She earlier held a roundtable with women from Central America.
We must also address corruption. We must promote the rule of law. We must focus with a priority on reducing violence, and we must empower women.
Biden, escucha. The summit also attracting protesters.
Now, rest assured, migration remains the huge focus of this summit. The U.S. and other countries need guidance on how to help those fleeing violence and seeking better lives. In Los Angeles, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
An armed man who made threats against Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh was arrested near the justice's house early this morning. A statement from the nation's highest court says the man in his 20s is from California and was armed with a gun and a knife. He reportedly told law enforcement officers that he wanted to kill the Catholic justice who has ruled in favor of pro-life policies. San Francisco has voted in favor of a measure to recall the city's district attorney. The future of Chesa Boudin bitterly divided Democrats. The 41-year-old narrowly won back in 2019. He was part of a national wave of progressive prosecutors who pledged to seek alternatives to incarceration. His time in office included footage of brazen shoplifting and violent attacks against mostly older people. And joining us now is Tom Bevan, co-founder and president of Real Clear Politics. Tom, welcome back. Always so good to see you. A lot to get to, including some of the primary results last night. But first, I want to get your take on that armed man arrested near Justice Kavanaugh's home and charged with attempting to murder the justice.
Well, obviously a very scary situation and one that Congress needs to address. The Senate has already passed the Supreme Court Police Parity Act. It is languishing in the House of Representatives. And I suspect after this, we will see them take that up and get that passed so that so that Supreme Court justices and their families will have armed police protection around the clock, because clearly this was a close call and something that we don't want to see happen.
Yeah, Tom, how do you think we got to this point? A Republican Senator Mitch McConnell, he blamed the incident on rhetoric from pro-abortion Democrats. Your take?
Look, I think certainly the rhetoric around the Supreme Court has been elevated. You had, the majority leader of the United States Senate, Chuck Schumer, standing on the steps of the Supreme Court last year saying by name, addressing justices by name, saying they have reaped the whirlwind. And so really aggressive language, and obviously with the leak of the Roe decision and that decision, the final decision pending, we saw protests outside the justice's house. Those were not repudiated immediately by the White House. Press Secretary Jen Psaki actually was encouraging people to go there and protest peacefully, even though we know that protesting outside of justice homes is illegal. It's a violation of federal law. So I think Democrats have been a little bit reckless in the way that they've addressed this, and everybody needs to take a breath, calm down. And again, we need to get the Supreme Court justices the protection that other federal elected officials have.
Yeah, indeed. Switching gears slightly, as reported, voters in San Francisco voted to recall the city's progressive district attorney. What do you make of this, and what kind of message do you think this says?
Well, I think it is a real warning shot to Democrats. We saw what happened with the mayor's race in New York with Eric Adams, who was more of a pro-law enforcement candidate, win that race. We saw also in Los Angeles last night a former Republican billionaire developer, Rick Caruso, outpoll Karen Bass, Democrat congresswoman there, and is now in a final runoff with her. And then obviously you mentioned Chesa Boudin in San Francisco. A very liberal city that overwhelmingly, I mean, this wasn't even close. There's still votes to be counted, but it was a 20-point margin in favor of recalling him and kicking him out of office after 2 years because of what they've seen on the ground in San Francisco with the crime, homelessness, the filth, and the like. That is a message that I think Democrats should really take to heart, in cities all around the country, because they're going to be going to face voters not too far from now. Crime is definitely an issue that is in the mix and will play in November.
Yeah, there are also primaries in around half a dozen states. That is yesterday. Anything else catch your eye?
Well, the other big news, sort of shocking news, Abby Finkenauer, who was a congresswoman from Iowa, who lost her reelection bid in 2020, was trying to take on Chuck Grassley, and she was also resoundingly defeated, which is a bit of a shocker. She was seen as sort of a rising star of the Democratic Party, lost her bid for the Senate there. So that was one of the other sort of, I would say, interesting results from contests all around the nation. Last seven states conducted primaries yesterday, so a lot of races to keep track of, but that was certainly one worth noting.
Yeah, and what other stories are you following, Tom?
Well, we do have news today. We just added another poll to our Real Clear Politics average. The Quinnipiac poll came out. Joe Biden's job approval has dropped to 39.7% in our Real Clear Politics average. That is a new all-time low for Biden. Again, presidential job approval is one of the key metrics for determining how Democrats are going to fare in this November's elections. And right now at 39.7%, Biden is going in the wrong direction. That number has to come up if Democrats want to have any hope of winning or keeping control of the Senate and or the House.
All right, we're going to leave it right there, Tom. Thanks so much. I always appreciate your analysis.
Thank you.
Well, the U.S. House is poised to pass a broad gun control package with no Republican support in the Senate. Bipartisan talks continue. Meanwhile, a House committee heard from survivors of mass shootings in Buffalo, New York, and Uvalde, Texas. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales has more.
Members of the House Oversight and Reform Committee listened to emotional testimony from victims and families of the Uvalde and Buffalo shootings. Democrats used the testimony to push for more gun reform. But I spoke to the lead Republican who sits on the committee, who tells me it was all for show.
I think the Democrats are going to try to really strike a chord They're going to try to get the voters' attention off of inflation, off the border crisis, off all the Biden crises, and kind of have an emotional hearing.
The Democrat committee chair accused Republicans of looking for excuses.
They have blamed violent video games. They have blamed family values. They have even blamed open doors. They have blamed everything but guns.
A mother whose son was injured in the New York shooting demands lawmakers to act.
Common sense gun laws are not about your personal feelings or beliefs. You are elected because you have been chosen and are trusted to protect us. But let me say to you here today, I do not feel protected.
A father shared his tearful story of his daughter who covered herself in another child's blood at the school to avoid being shot.
She's everything, not only for me, but her siblings and her mother. I thank y'all for letting me be here and speak out, but I wish something will change, not only for our kids, but every single kid in the world, because schools are not safe anymore.
Former police officer, Republican Congressman Clay Higgins says he was sworn to protect the public and argues those freedoms must not be touched.
And it is essential that the fundamental freedoms, First Amendment, Second Amendment, Fourth Amendment, are always protected and preserved by this body.
Over in the Senate, a bipartisan group of lawmakers continue to negotiate. Sources tell me Mitch McConnell, the Republican leader, may be open to raising the age from 18 to 21 to buy an assault weapon, which could influence other Republicans to follow. At the Capitol, Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
In Nigeria, a local leader fears consequences if war breaks out following a deadly attack against a Catholic church.
Consider our population, over 100 million people.
The monarch of Owa Kingdom calls Sunday's bloodshed a terrorist attack. He has met other ethnic leaders to prevent future violence. Meanwhile, protests closed a popular marketplace. While the death toll from Sunday's attack varies, most reports say gunmen killed at least 38 people, including children. Many were injured, some critically. In Germany, a man drove a car into a popular Berlin shopping district today, leaving at least one person dead and several more injured, some critically as well. Bystanders reportedly detained the 29-year-old driver before his arrest by an officer near the scene. Authorities are investigating whether that driver acted deliberately or suffered a medical emergency. Turkey's foreign minister says progress is being made to bring wheat, grain, and other much-needed supplies out of war-torn Ukraine.
Ukrayna'dan ve Rusya'dan ihraç edilecek.
The remarks took place following a meeting with Russian leaders. Moscow says it would implement the plan in exchange for an easing of some sanctions. Turkey's foreign minister also says that he is optimistic that talks will resume soon to end the months-long military conflict. Coming up, vandalism strikes another pro-life pregnancy center. We take a closer look. Pro-abortion supporters firebombed a pro-life Christian pregnancy center yesterday near Buffalo, New York. The center suffered significant damage, with much of the interior of the building burned and destroyed. Repairs will cost hundreds of thousands of dollars and could take several months. Well, another pro-life center was targeted yesterday in North Carolina. Mountain Area Pregnancy Services in Asheville had its windows smashed and was spray painted with pro-abortion slogans. Pro-life centers have been targeted in 6 other states and Washington, D.C. And joining us now is Joe Bukuras, staff writer for EWTN's Catholic News Agency. Joe, welcome back. Great to see you. I know you've been reporting on these incidents. What more can you tell us, and does it seem like they may be related in some way?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, Tracy. And before we get to those, I'd just like to report that I was just told by a volunteer at South Broward Pregnancy Help Center in Hollywood, Florida, that also was vandalized in a similar way that the two in North Carolina and New York was vandalized. So that's a developing story with more details to come. But so the New York Center, it was hit on Tuesday morning, early Tuesday morning. It was firebombed. As the CEO of the clinic says, it was hit with graffiti that says Jane was here. had broken windows. And similarly, the one in North Carolina also was hit with graffiti, which said no forced birth, and if abortions aren't safe, neither are you, which we have seen in other vandalisms. And they had broken windows also, and an anarchist symbol, something that looks like an A with a circle around it.
This is all just so disturbing. Joe, what do you make of all this vandalism? I mean, you've been reporting on it.
Yeah, well, it's awful. And every time I talk to the CEOs of these clinics, the word they always use is heartbroken. They're heartbroken because these services, and there are about 3,000 of these clinics around the country, these services are often given at a very low cost to no cost at all. And they're just there to help women. They always tell me, we're just trying to help women. We're not a political organization. We're just here to serve. We don't understand why our clinic was hit. And, I just really feel for them when I'm talking to them. And it's so difficult hearing that over and over and over again, because this isn't a political issue. I mean, these people are just helping women. And so, yeah, they're just so heartbroken and some of them angry at what's happening. But what they do tell me is that they're not dissuaded by this violence that happens towards their clinics. They're always motivated. They're reminded of their mission. And they always say they're just going to keep going and keep serving women, because that's exactly why they do what they do.
That is so great to hear, because I was going to ask you that, are they feeling intimidated or worried about their safety or the safety of their clients?
Yeah, I mean, again, they keep saying that when this happens, they're only reinforced in their mission. They're reminded of why they do what they do. And, we're in such a heated time in our country with the Dobbs case, obviously, planning to come out and expected to come out in late June or early July. And so there's high tensions in the country. And it reminds these clinic workers that they're there to help women. They're there to support women in a time of need, in a time of crisis in their lives. And that's really what the pro-life movement is all about. It's about supporting women and upholding the dignity of human life.
Yeah, and Joe, you had mentioned some of the graffiti that was written. It referenced a group. It said Jane was here. What more can you tell us about these radical, pro-abortion groups that are springing up and threatening pro-lifers?
Sure. So in the latest reports of vandalisms against pregnancy resource centers, the words, Jane was here, Jane's revenge, or Jane says revenge, they've all been seen at the scene of multiple vandalisms across the country. Who is this group? It's unclear right now who they are. There have been reports that, Jane's revenge, as people have begun to call them, that they get their name from a 1960s activist group called Jane Collective. And that group aimed to provide abortions to women while it was still illegal in the country. Also in a couple different online posts calling for violence in response to the Dobbs case that's planned to come out. The words Jane's revenge has been the signature at the bottom of those pages. So, is this an official group? Are they a nonprofit? I mean, I don't know. It doesn't seem that way. Are they copycat cases? Possibly. We're still looking into that right now. And but what we do know is that, those words keep popping up all around the country. So it's definitely something that we're keeping an eye on.
Joe, I'm curious, and I don't know if you've heard this or not, but, as we get closer to the Supreme Court releasing its opinion on Dobbs, are some of these pregnancy centers, are they doing anything to protect themselves, maybe stepping up security at all?
I'm not sure about every single one, but I can tell you about the ones I have spoken with that they do have security measures in place. In fact, the one in New York, Compass Care, which is located in a suburb of Buffalo, they actually told me that morning that they got hit at 8 a.m. they had planned to put armored glass in preparation for all the violence that has been happening around the country. Now, obviously, they were vandalized before they could get that glass in, but it does seem like pro-life pregnancy centers are taking protective measures in the wake of violence, which has just struck the country awfully.
Yeah, it's really sad that we've gotten to this point. I know that you're going to continue to cover these stories. So, Joe, thank you so much for your reporting. It's important.
Thanks for having me.
Up next, the world's oldest man credits a beloved devotion as the secret to his longevity. Plus, an astounding number of priests are newly ordained in one Mexican diocese. The world's oldest man just celebrated his 113th birthday and credits his prayer life for keeping him going. Juan Vicente Perez Mora is passionate about his Catholic faith and prays the rosary twice a day. Mora, who lives in Venezuela, tells Guinness World Records his other longevity secrets include hard work, rest on holidays, going to bed early, loving God, and always carrying him in your heart. God bless him. Well, Pope Francis encourages the faithful not to hide their wrinkles because, quote, it's the heart that matters.
Non dimentichiamo che lo stile di Dio è vicinanza, compassione e tenerezza.
As Weekly talked to pilgrims at the Vatican, the Holy Father said the elderly are messengers of tenderness, wisdom, and love. Pope Francis also highlighted the beauty of old age, saying it moves people ahead toward our destination, toward God's heaven. A Vatican university just held a 3-day conference on the study of ecology. The event brought professors, politicians, and religious leaders together. Joining us now from Rome is Father Rene Micallef, Associate Professor at the Department of Moral Theology of the Pontifical Gregorian University. Father, thank you so much for your time today. I understand that the 3-day conference ends today. Can you talk to us about some of the highlights?
In my opinion, the highlights were the fact that we brought together a number of people from various academic disciplines and also from their various countries. So the conference was organized by the Pontifical Gregorian University in Rome, 2 German universities, the University of Eichstätt and Passau, the Catholic University of Eichstätt, Ingolstadt that is, and the Federation of German Scientists. But we also had people from various other institutions, an important group of speakers from the Javeriana University in Bogota, Colombia, and some speakers from the US, from Boston College, from Loyola Chicago, and from Fordham. The structure was interesting in the sense that we brought people to speak from different disciplines. We had climate scientists, biologists, we had experts in economics, social sciences, migration, plus philosophers, theologians, and experts in law. The 3 days were dedicated to 3 main disciplines. So we had natural scientists in the first day, social sciences in the second day, and then the third day today we have humanistic sciences with law, philosophy, and theology.
Yeah, you mentioned a holistic way, and a lot has been said about a holistic approach. For those who may not understand that, can you explain a little bit more?
So the expression which we find in Laudato Si is that everything is interconnected, no? Everything is connected with everything else. This is obviously an issue because most sciences have developed since the 1500s by specializing and in a way over-specializing, with the risk of being closed in each discipline in its own method, in its own world, having publications which are peer-reviewed and which are closed within their particular academic world. But we cannot solve complex problems unless we put together all of these knowledges and bring people to dialogue and solve the problem with the different points of view taken into account.
Father, this is all so very interesting, and thank you for taking the time to speak with us about all of this. God bless you. And finally tonight in Mexico, the Archdiocese of Guadalajara is now blessed with 70 newly ordained priests. Cardinal Jose Francisco Robles Ortega presided over the ordinations during 2 separate ceremonies last weekend. During his homily on Pentecost Sunday, Cardinal Robles called the sending forth of these priests, quote, patent proof of the action of the Holy Spirit. We thank you for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Tracy Sable. Good night and God bless.